This is a tutorial for higher musicians. You will need a pen and paper and to take notes as we go. At the end, please can you type up your notes or take a photograph of them and hand them in to me on Teams. The concepts that we're going to look at in this tutorial are jazz funk and Mordent under the higher concepts list. And we're going to revise pitch bend from National 5, syncopation, saxophone, trumpet and simple time from National 4, and from National 3, improvisation, rock and drum kit. Please can you write your name at the top of your notes and write out a list of those concepts now, thank you. Please have a listen to this example of jazz funk, which is about 4 minutes long. How smooth was that? It was an arrangement of September, originally by Earth, Wind and Fire, performed by the Jazz All-Stars. So please write down jazz funk. This is the first concept that we'll focus on, and it is a higher concept. Jazz funk is a combination of jazz improvisation and it uses amplified instruments like electric guitar and electric bass guitar, as opposed to double bass and acoustic guitar. And jazz funk has elements of rock in it as well. So we're going to revise some other concepts as well, but we're sticking with this one piece of music so that by the end of the tutorial, you're really confident understanding the concept of jazz funk. So the first concept that we're going to revise is actually from National 3, and it's improvisation. Please write that down with your own definition. I like to explain improvisation as making music up on the spot without too much planning. However, as your higher music students, you will know that jazz musicians do plan their improvisations. They have got an idea in their heads of what chords are coming next, and they do plan in advance roughly where they're going to go with the music. So it's not completely cold. They know the chord progression and they've got a good idea. It's just that improvisations aren't usually written down, and there is kind of absolutely on the spur ideas being played whilst they're in the performance. So have a listen to the improvisations of the saxophone player in the solo section. So you can hear in this section that the saxophone player is not playing the main tune that we recognise from Earth, Wind and Fire. They're improvising their own tune over the same chord progression. And as you've just listened to the saxophone, that was our National 4 concept in this tutorial. Just a little bit of revision for you. The saxophone is a woodwind instrument, although it's not made of wood. It's used, the sound is made by blowing through a reed, and you get saxophones of different sizes, ranging from the soprano sax to the baritone sax. And it has a really distinctive sound, the saxophone. Sometimes you hear the saxophone in an orchestra, especially a 20th century orchestra, but it's not a traditional orchestral instrument. You really associate the saxophone with jazz. So as I said previously, jazz funk combines amplified instruments and acoustic instruments. So let's have a listen to the opening of the music and see if we can work out what instruments we can hear playing. So during this introduction, we can hear the tambourine, and it's probably the drum kit player that's playing the tambourine before he moves on to the kit. And we can hear electric guitar and electric bass guitar, and we can hear the saxophone. But what other instruments join in throughout the piece? Have a listen to the next excerpt and tell me what other instruments you can hear joining in. So in that extract from later on in the song, we can hear the addition of the drum kit and some acoustic brass instruments, mostly the trumpet we can hear. Now this piece of music's been mixed in a studio, and you can tell that because the trumpets are actually quite quiet in this recording. Usually trumpets are not a quiet instrument. If you listen really carefully, you can hear them like behind the saxophone. The saxophone has been mixed so it's really prominent because after all it is the solo instrument. Have another listen to that extract and make sure you can really hear those trumpets. So as said said previously, jazz funk does include some elements of rock, and in this example it is a very smooth jazz funk piece, but the influences of rock is really what the drummer's doing. The piece of music is in simple time, that we're just revising that National 4 concept, simple time, meaning that the beat divides equally into two. It does not divide equally into three, but it divides into two. The drummer is playing a full drum kit and providing a steady driving beat all the way through in the same way that a rock drummer would. They're not playing as loudly as a rock drummer, but there's definitely rock influences there in the simplicity of it. The drummer is providing a constant, steady beat all the way through that's not too flashy, because obviously the saxophone is taking all the limelight as the soloist. So the next concept we're going to revise is pitch bend from National 5. This is what the saxophone is doing to show off really in the middle of their improvising sections. There's two main pitch bends in this music and I'm going to play them to you now. Have a listen. How would you describe what a pitch bend is? Number 1 and number 2. So a pitch bend is literally sliding between pitches, usually a small distance. We're not talking about pitch bending an entire octave. That would probably be a glissando when you slide up and down an entire octave. But a pitch bend is where the musician playing will slide between two notes that are quite close to each other. So the next concept we're going to look at now is the mordent, and this is a higher concept. So mordents are ornaments. Remember, it's not just Baroque music that has tons of ornaments in. And this particular ornament is where you have your starting note or your main note, and then very, very quickly you flick up one note and then you return to the main note. So da-da-da, one note up to another note and back to your main note. It's not a trill where you're alternating between notes really, really quickly. It's just a little flick up and then back down to your main note. And I noticed that there were some mordents in here, so let me play you some examples. Here you go. So have one more listen to that extract and count how many times you can hear the saxophone player go da-da, and it's almost like a grace note, because you could think that a grace note would just be da-da, but because you've got the main note before the flick up and down again, that's the difference between a grace note and a mordent. So have another listen to that extract, and don't forget to type up or take a photograph of your notes and hand them in to me on Teams. I hope that you've got a good understanding now of jazz funk. Thank you. And I've just realised that I didn't revise with you syncopation clearly. So if you're still listening, this will be a good test to see if you are, but if you're still listening, please can you write down syncopation? And this is a National 4 concept. It's a rhythmic device where you have accents in between or off the beat, and is a really big characteristic or feature, if you like, of jazz music and jazz funk. Thank you. This really is the end now. Thanks.